But once you break through that, so then it's your job to go out and find a business, find an opportunity, understand what is a good opportunity in what you want to do. Let's just use laundromats for an example. Yeah, laundromats. They're everywhere. You would think they'd have gone away by now. You would think they would have gone by the way of the taxi cab, right? They're still there, always there. And they're in every town in America. And they have one of the lowest failure rates of any business. Now, when you go to buy a business, you will find that the seller, in many cases, is willing to do owner financing, which means that they will take back part of the debt, so you don't have to pay them all the money at one time, and then you just have to figure out what is the best terms. Is it a loan? Let's say it's $200,000. Are they going to take back a loan for, let's say, $125,000? All right, they want you to come up with $75,000. All right. Now, they'll take that loan back and you'll have to pay them an interest rate. And it'll be amortized maybe over 20 years or 30 years. It could be interest only, IO, interest only loan. And that'll reduce if you get an IO loan with the seller, that means in the end, when all the money's due, it's called a balloon payment. So it might be based upon, if it's amortized, that means you're going to be paying some of the principal down every month. And then at the end of 5 years or 6 years or whatever, you're then going to pay them off the rest of the money you owe them all in one lump sum, less the principal pay down. If it's IO, that means that if it's for 5 years, that means you'll have only paid interest on the loan and you'll owe them the same amount of money that you started with. And you'll go and you'll go to the bank or go somewhere to get that money. Now there's two problems here, right? Where do you get the $75,000 and how are you going to be able to pay them off in 5 years? Because most sellers will not hold a note we've just recently working out with one where they'll go 10 years. Most sellers want their money be somewhere between 5 and 10 years and closer to the 5. Sometimes they want less. And so that's one problem. But the first problem, the first hurdle you got to get to is how do you get the $50,000 or $75,000 it's going to take to get into your first laundromat. Now remember, you could start up that laundromat, but then you're going to have to go and you're going to have to find a location. You're going to have to then get that location all approved by the village. Then you're going to have to go in and put in a whole lot of plumbing and electric. Then you're going to have to go out and buy all those machines. Now you could probably buy them on time and outfit the whole place. You think that's going to cost you, $10,000? No, it's going to cost you some serious money too. So, but when you go and you start brand new, you have no business, you have no revenue stream, you have no employees, you have nothing. You got to start from zero, ground zero. All you've got is a bunch of maybe new or newly used machines. From the signage outside, to the toilet paper in the bathroom, you're going to all have to buy all that brand new on day one. Now, somebody will say to me, yeah, but don't you have to have toilet paper when you buy the business too? You do, but there are some rolls on the roll already. So there's some there. So but the bottom line is that then your only hurdle for getting into business is coming up with the down payment. Because you went out and found the proper laundromat. You can look at its number. We'll talk about due diligence in a minute. But you got to get that down payment. So how are you going to do that? Well, because you're going to have done your due diligence, you're going to know. You can sign what's called an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, where then you get the numbers from the business. And then you just can't tell all your buddies because they violated the non-disclosure agreement. You could be sued. So when you get these numbers, it'll say who you can talk to. Your accountant, some of your key employees, your lawyer. That's really the bottom line. So you're going to sign that NDA. You're going to get those financials. You're going to go over those financials. You're going to get a copy of the person's tax return to make sure that what's being shown on the financials. Now, I get it. There's a lot of businesses out there in which they take cash in and don't report it to the IRS. I get it. And I would never tell you, and we don't, I would never tell you to run your business that way. If it can't run on top of the table, if it can't be profitable on top of the table, then forget businesses that have to be run under the table. That is bullshit. You don't want to deal with it. You don't want to touch it. But you will find that when you go to buy businesses, there are times when they're doing it both on top of the table and under the table. And you got to figure out a way to determine what are the true numbers. Some ways to do that is you can look at what their product, how much product are they buying? Does that match up with what the gross revenue would be based on selling that product or service, right? So there's some ways to look at it. You can find that out. So you got there and you found a business. It's profitable because you've done your due diligence. The seller may be willing. Listen, almost every seller I've ever walked into has said, where the agent said, no, it'll say on the data sheet of the information, your initial information, seller doesn't want to hold financing. But then when you ask the agent, you think the seller might hold some financing? After all, the banks aren't lending money out to anybody on a commercial basis right now. What do you think? Does he really want to sell it? Now, if the guy doesn't really want to sell his business, there's a lot of people out there that put shit up for sale, and they don't really care if they sell it or not. But if he's motivated to sell it, most likely he will find a way in order to accommodate all or some of your need for owner financing, because they know you can't just go to the bank. Yes, we'll talk about SBA loans. You can go to get an SBA loan, but there's a very long, drawn-out process under which many times doesn't come to fruition. And they've tried it. Most of these sellers have been buyers at one time or another. And so they're much rather, hold the paper. Plus, they don't have to then pay all the taxes at one time. They could pay it as the money comes in. And so it really kind of helps them out in that way too. And so you're going to go in there. Now you're going to sit there and say, I've found the right business. It's got the right numbers. It's in a good market play. It's in a good market, and it's in a good marketplace. Okay. It's got a good location for whatever it is. It's got an established clientele. It's got money coming in already, money going out, and there's profit. Now, chances are when you buy it, there's going to be less profit. So when you do your pro forma, what is performance? What your expectation is of what that business is going to do after you buy it? You have to then add in the fact that your debt structure, what you will owe, is different than what the seller owes. He may not owe anything. He just might have to maintain things. But you're going to have to understand that so you can allow for that different debt structure, because it's going to change the numbers for you. Your profit margin might be then less than what his profit margin is because you have debt. Make sense? So then you're going to go one step further, right? So you got the seller willing to hold paper. He may just be willing to say, yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'd be open to it now, but I'm going to want a significant down payment. So let's say on a $200,000 business, let's just say that's $50,000. That's 25%, right? Pretty significant. All right, even if it's 75. Now you have to say to yourself, I found the location, I found the marketplace, I found a profitable business. Now what do you need? You need the money. That's right. Show me the money, baby. And that comes from the fact that what you're going to do, okay, is then you're going to go out and look to what? Raise the money. Now, there's two ways to raise that money. One is you can borrow it, right? Maybe a family member, grandfather, mother, father, whatever your situation is. Maybe you could borrow it out of a 401k plan that you've got. These are just options. You do what you want to do. But if you wanted to be in business, okay, then you're going to have to come up with the money. Maybe it's a HELOC on your house. Oh my God, I can't touch my house. That's sine non gratis. Bullshit, it's sine non gratis. When you're an entrepreneur, your house is not sine non gratis. In other words, it's not hands off. It is just part of your personal bank. That's right. Because either you're going to be in business or you're just going to go to work for the next 40 years. And then you can sit there and say, yeah, my house is hands off. And in the end, okay, you're going to be laid off. You're going to retire from there, get whatever money you get, and good luck with that. But if you want financial freedom, if this is what your goal is, to be in business, to get financial freedom, your house is not sine non gratis. Even if you go get an SBA loan and you own a home, chances are they're going to want to attach that. That's just the way this game works. So you literally can go, though, and borrow the money necessary, whether it be off your home, whether it be off of credit cards, whether it be line. When you want to buy a business, when you want to get in business, you will do what it takes as long as it's legal and ethical. And everybody around you is going to tell you, oh, you're being stupid. Oh, you're going to lose your money. Oh, why would you take such risk? Oh, your family's going to suffer. You think that's what they say, because they think with small minds and do not have any big ideas. You went out, you found a business that is successful, that can handle the additional debt against its margins, that will still be very profitable. And all you need is $75,000 in order to buy this business? People are buying pickup trucks for $75,000, for God's sake. Like the way I said that? That's pretty good. So, find the money. They could be partners. Remember, partners. That's word. We've talked about partners. Maybe you bring in a partner and it isn't the best thing in the world, but it got you into that business. Maybe you never partner up with that person again. Maybe later on you got to buy that partner out and he's a pain in the ass, but you got into business. Remember, I always say the amount of money you make is equally proportional to the amount of aggravation you're willing to put up with in order to make that money and become successful. You don't want any day-to-day. You want any aggravation. You want to live in mediocrity. You want to live in middle class. Well, then just keep doing what you're doing. You're on the path. You're going to have to amp up the level of aggravation in the short term, because that aggravation doesn't go on forever. But then once you create the business, once you create the asset, once you create the revenue stream, it keeps rolling, baby. And that's when life gets good. So you go find the money. And then that becomes part of your capital stack that you're going to use along with your debt stack, which probably in this case is going to be held by the seller. And you just have to make sure that if you're borrowing any of that additional money for the down payment, that you add in the cost of that into your overall costs of debt, right? Because you need to make the payment to that person to pay that part of that $75,000 back. If it's an equity position, if you're making them a partner, well, then make sure that you understand what your role is, what their role is. Their role going to be totally passive? Is their role going to be active? And make sure you understand, everybody understands these parameters. You stick it in writing. You keep it all legal. Because, come on, guys, ladies, shit happens when it comes to money. People change. And so you want to make sure that you have all that stuff written down and understood and signed off on. Now you've got the money, you've got the seller, you've got the business. Hey, you just got to make the transaction come together. And so what you typically will do then is you're going to have to put together an LOI, a letter of intent. Now, sometimes you got to put that LOI together, that letter of intent, even for them to give you the financials. But not always. Sometimes you just got to sign the NDA that they provide, the non-disclosure agreement, and they'll provide it. But in any case, let's say you're ready to start moving forward. You've got the commitments for the money. All right. Now, if the seller is worth his salt, he's going to want to see some proof of funds. So you better make sure that people who are going to commit money to you, they're willing to give you a bank statement showing you where the money's at. That's what you're going to have to do here. And so then that letter of intent is going to be used by you to go out, hire an attorney, and draw up an asset contract. Now, if there's real estate involved in it, chances are you're going to want to do a real estate contract separate than the asset contract, almost always. Now, if the guy is a corporation, one could always possibly just buy their stock and do a stock transaction where you're just buying his company. But be very careful about that. Some of the only reasons you might do that is if there's a gaming license involved or a liquor license involved in which you have to maintain that you, by owning the stock, you then become, you're not going to be shut down for in the interim before you get a new liquor license. But if you do buy stock from the company, buy the company's stock, then they're going to give you certain indemnifications, guarantees around it. They're going to guarantee that no one's been injured, that there's no workman's comp cases. They're going to make all these representations. And after all, if they're holding money, if they're holding the mortgage, they're certainly going to have to make sure that they are being upfront. But there is also an insurance policy when you buy the company through just buying the stock that the seller can buy, even if you're paying for it, that can insure over some of these possible legal traps. Like somebody slipped and fell and they just filed the lawsuit. There's an insurance policy that will cover you there. So just be careful. It's more preferable just to do as an asset sale and a real estate sale. But if you have to buy the stock in order to make sure that you don't lose licensing, then, you have to make sure you protect yourself. I'm not an attorney. Make sure you hire one, and make sure that you hire one that understands business. Don't go hire an attorney that just knows how to do real estate closings on residential properties. I'm telling you, it's going to cost you more because he's going to have to go out there and create these contracts. He's going to have to be able to figure it out. And chances are you're the guy that's going to get effed. So don't be that guy. Go find a business attorney, one that understands contracts, one that most of the stuff will be boilerplate for him. They push a button and most of it prints out. But then you must also reread these contracts. When we go and buy a business, I read the contract. Jonathan reads the contract. We have at least one other person read that contract. We will all find mistakes that the lawyers make in the drafts. I know. And then make sure you reread the final draft of the mistakes you want to fix. Because sometimes, they don't fix it all the way, or they fix that and make mistakes somewhere else. I'm telling you, this is what you got to do to make sure you protect yourself. Now, in the end, when you go and you buy this business, think about what you're buying. You're buying a continuous revenue stream. You're buying an inventory of whatever it is. You're buying the access to the employees that are already there, right? You're buying that, right? You're buying all the marketing, all the advertising, in most cases, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of advertising that if this company's been in business for 20 or 30 years, that they've done over all these years to create that brand. Now, we always have one general rule when we take over a business, right? And that general rule is the first rule, the second rule, and the third rule. And that is, don't F it up. If you're buying a successful business, yes, they're probably, chances are you're going to be buying this business from a baby boomer, an older baby boomer right now, who's finally going to get out of the business. It's successful. Doesn't have anybody there. There's no legacy for kids because they're in their 50s and 60s and they don't want the business anymore. The grandkids is the last thing they want. They just enjoy the benefits of it. They don't want to go to work. God forbid. All right, so you're going to be buying all of this is what you're buying. So you just have to make sure that you don't screw it up. Yes, you're going to see that there's some things that are tired around any business. When we go and we buy a business and then we do our due diligence, okay, we go through the business. It's what you're supposed to do with due diligence. If you're buying a business, whether it be a restaurant, well, let's just talk about a restaurant. This is what we like to buy. So we go through the thing ourselves. We've been in business for years. We understand. I've been in construction for years. I can do a cursory to see, what are the big problems, what are not, typically. But then we'll bring in the heating guy. We'll bring in the plumbing guy. If it's a restaurant, we want the plumbing guy. Why? Because those lines could be blocked. There could be all kinds of problems. So we bring in a plumbing guy. They may scope the lines just to make sure everything's clear. Why? Because we want to know either A, we're going to have to retrade the deal, which means go back and renegotiate, or accept what the problems are, but go into the deal knowing what the problems are and having an understanding of how we're going to fix them and when we're going to fix them. Are they problems that have to be fixed the day you buy it? Are they problems that could be fixed a year later? You think that couldn't be important? So these are all the things you take. I'm telling you guys, this is what I've learned. Do not assume a damn thing. If you get a pizza oven, make sure that the pizza oven's working. If you're buying a business that's got an auger machine, make sure that the auger machine is working. Bring somebody in that understands the equipment, that can give you an understanding of what's going on with that equipment. Otherwise, you're going to have a very unhappy surprise. All of a sudden, you're going to be putting out $60,000 for a pizza oven. You think you want to do that? Not me. At least unless I know it's part of the deal going in. That's really the bottom line. You don't want the negative surprises once you're in. So make sure part of your due diligence is the financial due diligence, making sure that you've looked at that you get the last 12 months, not 12 months ago, but the trailing 12. Number one, when it comes to financial information, when you do your due diligence, you want to get as much financial information. If it's a restaurant, we want to know how many people are sitting, if they've got a POS system, point of sale system, we want them to run reports. How many people are sitting in the dining room on a Friday night? How many people are sitting in the dining room on a Tuesday night? We want to know how many workers they've got working on. We'd like to know every possible thing there is to know about how that restaurant works. If it's a pizza restaurant, how much flour are you making your own dough, and how much flour is it taking? We want to break that down because we're going to be responsible for all of that once we take over the operation. The other thing you want to do too is whenever you write these contracts, make sure that if it's something that has product that has to be sold, you want to make sure that depending upon the kind of business it is, it either has at least 1 week's worth of product, depending upon how long it takes to get product. Like in the restaurant business, we wanted to have at least a week's worth of food of the staples, of the things needed in order to conduct the restaurant. Because, it only takes a couple of days to get more stuff, but we don't want to walk in there and all of a sudden we don't have the product necessary to provide the services that are expected that night, that day. If you're in a plumbing business, you're going to buy a plumbing business, you got to make sure that there's enough equipment, enough supplies, pipe, fittings, whatever, solder, that you're going to get 1 month's worth, 1 week's worth, whatever it is. A lot of it has to do with how long it takes for stuff to spoil, especially in the restaurant business, and how long it takes things to be ordered and received. So understand that. So if you buy something, like say a plumbing business, and all of a sudden it doesn't have enough pipe in it, is it going to take a month to get new pipe? Or can you get that in a week? That's what you need to know. It's all part of business. You have to get that understanding. You have to know which employees, by having interviews with the employees and doing part of that as part of your due diligence and listening to what they say, who they are, okay, how they act. These are all really important. Are people going to leave the moment you walk in the door? Listen, Don Pena says, when you walk in the door, just pick somebody and fire their ass right there on the spot and you'll get everybody's respect. Well, that's a good way to do it, but I don't know if it always works based upon the size of the business you're buying, right? He's buying large companies. Therefore, he's just trying to make a point. Now, he tends to pick somebody that he already knows is not doing the job because he's done his due diligence. Now, so you're doing your due diligence. You got your physical due diligence, okay, on both the building, if it's a building you're buying, even if you're renting the building, make sure that you understand the lease. If it is a net lease, that means that you're going to rent the building from the seller, okay, or the owner of the building, but then you are responsible for the taxes, the insurance, the replace the furnace if it goes back. He's responsible for nothing. So understand what terms you're renting on. And if you're willing to accept that. And if it is a net lease, you've got to do the same kind of due diligence on that property as if you were going to buy it. Because you will be responsible for all the mechanicals, okay, of that property. Do you want that responsibility without checking it out? Now, if you say to me, Vic, this sounds really it's just so much easier to start a business. I can tell you the difference between starting a business all by yourself and buying an existing business has nothing to do with the mechanicals. It has nothing to do with the equipment. It has to do with the customer base that already exists. It has to do with the fact that what you're really buying is you're buying revenue. When we look to buy a business, we are looking to buy revenue. And then revenue that because of the fact that the owners have been there for so long, okay, that they've ignored certain parts of the business that are very profitable, but they didn't want to bother with it, or they're just don't care as much. It's kind of like when you buy in a small apartment building and it's a mom and pop, and they've been renting out that apartment building for 25, 30 years. You will find that the rents that they are receiving from the tenants are so below market rent, it's ridiculous. Just show me a tenant that's been there in that same building, that 3-flat or 4-flat or 6-flat for 20 years, and I'll show you a tenant that's paying way less than should. Because what happens to sellers is as they get the building paid off, what happens to the owners of these buildings is that they get the buildings paid off. They stop raising the rents because they don't want the aggravation of trying to change the tenant and they having to go in there and clean it. So then they're making more money than they ever did because the building's paid off, and so they stop raising the rent. Same thing in a business. The business owners, they stop pushing. If they're 75 years old, do you think they stopped pushing a little while ago? So they're still running a very profitable business that they have paid off. If it's in a building they own, most likely the building's paid off. They're making as much or more money than they ever did. So you're looking for that kind of a business so that you can also then enhance what's going on there. And what do you want to make sure that you don't do? Don't F it up. And then you move forward. So you get to go pick a successful business. You get to have the seller finance that successful business. You need to be able. You can then go and find money to use the down payment, and you're in the deal. Maybe you're only receiving 75% of the profit because other people put up the down payment. I don't know. Whatever your deal is to get that down payment, you've got to get it because you did all the other good work. So that's kind of a step-by-step as to why you want to own an existing business. You want to buy an existing business because you are buying a revenue stream. You are buying a profit margin. And that's what business is all about. So think about what I just said. Any questions on it? Shoot me an email, a text, shoot me a DM on the thing, leave a comment. And hey, let's get out there. Let's make it happen. And what do I always say? Think big. That's right. Don't be just looking to start a business. Buy a business. That's thinking big. That's the first step. Think big. Start now. And grow fast. Get out there. Let's make it happen. V. Rigoni, Max, high performance real estate entrepreneur. Now you can smash that like button. Talk to you soon.